All right, everybody, we're going to get rolling. Welcome. It's 6:30 on Thursday, and I just wanted to give you a quick update as to where we are on the reopening. Still targeting August 3rd as a final, or by August 3rd, to get our final plan rolled out, and we're just taking as much information as we can in the process. So I want to make sure before we get going that I am up and rolling, and it looks like I am. So we'll keep that process going, and I'll be taking a look at Facebook tonight for questions and that kind of thing. So we're going to get going with a couple of different options and a couple of different just updates from the board meeting on Monday. Then we're going to get into some of the question and answer. We'll do some question and answer. I do want to get to some of the options that we're putting out there for people to really just kind of consider moving forward. So we're going to do that, and then looking at myself thinking, my goodness, I got my shirts all over the place. I apologize for that. but then also to try to figure out as we put plans in place some of the questions that people might have. I do want to make sure if we get to the end of this thing and I don't talk about the next parent survey coming out for people in terms of transportation and virtual component of Cricket Online, please make sure that I don't leave without talking to parents about what that's going to look like. So if we get to the end and I'm like, oh, hey, have a great night, everybody, take care, and I don't mention that part, like just say, hey, buddy, you said, come on, let's go. So that's what we're going to do today. And I just want to make sure that everybody was aware of where we're at in regard to the board meeting on Monday. Thank you for the feedback on that meeting from a staff perspective, from a community perspective, from a board perspective. Everybody is really weighing, I shouldn't say it like that. We have a number of people weighing in on the presentation and talking about some things that they liked about it, some things that they hated about it. And we're just going to continue to try to roll out and get as many voices as we can before making a final decision. So that's where we sit right now. I did want to take you to talk to you a little bit about the board presentation and where we're at, or how that whole thing rolled out, and just make sure that we're in the right spot. Okay, fantastic. Looks like we're good to go there too. So on Monday we rolled out the board presentation for the next step in the process of our plan to reopen schools in the fall. And all of those resources, if you go to the district website and then you go to the COVID-19 page that's off to the bottom left-hand side of the page, click on that, and that will take you to all of our resources. And the ones towards the top are the school reopening options presentation, as well as all of the district survey data from the 4K perspective, 4K through 2, 3, 5, 6, 8, and 9, 12. That's all right there for you to digest and ask questions about. And hopefully we can kind of roll together on what that looks like. But in there, the school reopening option is the top presentation, is the top link. And if you click on that, you can kind of get to the presentation that we did the other day. And without going into the presentation, if you'd like to see that, that's part of the Facebook Live that was on Monday. But we talked about the intent, the survey data, the options, and the next steps. Those were the big things that we talked about. The timeline, the intent is really to give us a perspective of where we want to go as a group and discuss the options. And we put forward 5 options as a starting point to have the discussion, and then directions from the board, and then we're making a final decision prior to August 3rd. The survey data, I won't go through. We went through all of those pieces on Monday, but I did want to kind of get down to, and we did actually last week when we talked about it in our Facebook Live as well, but it comes down to those 3 components that we talked about to really guide the principals: safety of students, staff, and community, ensuring learning for all levels that meet state standards, and then the flexibility of delivery, because we're going to have a number of people who have different needs moving forward. So the options that we have out there right now as the main options for discussion, and there are 5 of them. The first option is our on-site learning with everybody, 4K through 12 on-site. That is our preferred method. If there's any way that we can do that safely and in securely and everything that goes along with it, we will do that. That's what we want to do. That's our intent. The couple of things play into whether or not we can do that, and one of them obviously is to make sure that we can keep people at a safe distance. And when we talk about what that looks like, we have to talk about how many rooms we have available, and if there's an opportunity to make sure that we can get everybody in. Then that's obviously number one choice for us. The second choice for us is the on-site learning for 4K through 5 and 6 through 8, and then a 9 through 12 blended model, which would keep kids here half of the time, and then in a virtual environment half of the time. The majority of the conversations have gone along with Monday, Tuesday on-site, Wednesday cleaning day, Thursday, Friday with the second group coming in. That is not set in stone. We could go to 4-day weeks, week on, week off, that kind of thing as well. But we would have that conversation with our instructors at that level and see if that's the right thing, or they believe that that's the right thing for the students that they serve. And we will have that conversation with them, over the course of the next couple days. So that was our option 2, on-site learning 4K through 5 and 6 through 8, and then blended learning 9-12, or the blended model 9-12. This third option was the on-site learning for 4K through 5, and then the 6 through 12 would end up being in a blended model with the A-B schedule. Again, not knowing for sure if that's Monday, Tuesday with one group, Thursday, Friday with the second group, but that would be a blended model. The fourth option is a blended model for all students, 4K through 12, and a virtual a blended model 4K through 12. And we're really struggling with that one because our youngest learners really need to be on site as much as we possibly can. And I think that's absolutely risen to the top in terms of need. And then the fifth option is the virtual learning option for everybody. So that's where we stand right now in terms of option, and to be quite honest, that is the order in which we want to pursue things. In terms of the feedback that we've gotten, an all on-site model for everybody would be our first choice. Our second choice is the on-site model for 4K through 8, blended model for 9-12, and our third choice would be the on-site 4K through 5 and the blended with 6 through 12. And I really hope we're in a position where that's as far as we get when it comes to our choices and what we do moving forward. So if we have to keep kind of paring that down to how many people who we have on site for more days, we really need to concentrate on making sure we can have our youngest learners on site for more days, more consistency there, and that kind of thing. And that's a high need, I think, for all of those kids at that level. And we've taken a couple things into consideration with those young learners. Honestly, is we want to keep them on site as long as we can for a couple reasons. First and foremost, they need the most interaction when it comes to face, and I think that they handle that virtual option in the least productive manner, because I think it's really difficult to teach at that level with that from a virtual perspective. But also, if we're feeling like we want to control the situation as much as possible, if we have kids on site, if we only have kids on site for half of the time, or they're in a virtual environment, we're in a situation where we truly believe that parents will be off to work, which means that those kids would be moving to a different facility, like a daycare facility or something like that, where a number of different kids are coming in from all different areas. And if we can control that environment and keeping our kids together and mitigate the risk for more exposure from outside spaces, then we're going to do that if we can. So those are the options that we have placed before you at this point, and having discussions about them. And those are the ones that we're going to really roll with, to be honest, if we can get that thing started. So the on-site learning environment, again, we talked about that piece, keeping the health and safety, trying to mitigate the risk in terms of, even in the cohort model with our kids, keeping them in smaller groups within that cohort model, so they're not working with a number of different kids all at one time, and we can keep kids from a social distance perspective in a safe spot. And then finally, to provide a socially acceptable and emotionally responsible opportunity, which really kind of comes down to, especially with our youngest learners, if we're teaching them to share and we're teaching them to connect and we're teaching them to be, caring great friends, it's really hard to do that in an environment where you say, well, we want you to care, we want you to share, we want you to be great friends, but not here. And not here, and not here at all. So we want to be very careful about that, and we're going to do everything we can to give our teachers the right opportunity to do that. So that's where we are at with the options and so forth and so on. All of these options right now, we're creating a plan that would be in place that we've already given to the board for review. And we'll continue to get feedback from them on what that would look like. All of the that plan indicates how we would go about making sure that we got kids into and out of the building, how we would react if one of our students did contract the virus, and what the contact tracing will look like and what the steps are for that. All of those things are in the plan that we've given to the board for feedback, and we'll continue to do so. And hopefully we can continue to grow that plan. So those are the areas that we have out there right now, and I'm going to see if I can jump on and find some questions, if there are questions here that we can get to. So why don't we get there and see if there are some questions available. If anybody has a question at this point, I'm going to actually try to grab these from my phone. So I apologize for the delay. Somebody had mentioned maybe getting some music to play in between me reading questions and making sure that I read it the correct way before answering it. I don't have any music, man. I just don't at this point. I'm sorry. So I may have to. First question is, what does sports, gym, art, and music look like? Sports right now, I can just speak to the WIA guidelines that are they came out today in terms of trying to push back a couple of the seasons. Yet at the same time, I do believe they're going to start, and I have to review it, so please don't quote me on it right now. But they're looking at it will be tennis and girls golf, and for us it would be cross country. That would start, I think, on their designated time. But football and volleyball would be pushed back to, I believe, September 7th. So that's something that we're considering. Not considering, that's something that has to be done. So Brad Saransky is working with that to try to figure out what that looks like. So the next question was, what about mask guidelines and what will be recommended for on-site learning? The mask guidelines continue to be probably the most debated conversation in terms of what we want to have done here. We do believe that kids need to be in masks in common areas, but we also do believe that they need some time out of the mask to make sure that they can get the full breath in and everything that goes along with it, even if you have breathable material. So we would devise a plan for that, which would essentially mean that in common areas, kids would be required to wear masks when they are in the classroom, and if they're working independently, socially distanced from all of their classmates, like we're doing with summer school right now. When they're not required to wear a mask when they're at those workstations, but when somebody comes to work with them, then they are required to have a mask, and the teacher would have a mask at that time too. So if they're within 6 feet, right now in summer school, we are requiring a mask, and we'll do so when we have our summer school start with our elementary kids on August 3rd. But when they are not within 6 feet and they're working independently at a spot, then they would have time out of a mask at that point. So that's kind of where that is. But we're going and then that's a fluid. I want to be really honest about that. That's a fluid conversation because right now the order in our county doesn't require it, and but in those indoor spaces. But if it does, then we have to make an adjustment to what it looks like and try to do the best that we can to adhere to the order. And what we're trying to do is, obviously mitigate the risk. And if there is an instance where we have somebody that contracts the virus, we want to make sure that we don't that we have as much of a funnel on it in terms of how many people that we have to quarantine if if they tell us that we need to quarantine a group of people. And being in a building that's 4K through 12, it makes it really difficult if everybody's interacting. So though it's going to be uncomfortable and somewhat limited in terms of movement, then it's going to be then we have to be, but we still may have to do it. So Sarah asked about kids in small group in the high school look like. What does that look like? And we're all at different class choices and schedules. When it comes to the high school, Sarah, I think one of the things that's being discussed right now is there would be more movement and more common, there would be precautions in the common areas, but kids would move through their schedule on a pretty regular, a pretty traditional sense. But what we can do with those high school kids that we can't do with our younger kids is tell them to distance as much as possible and to wear a mask in areas where they can. So they would still get their class schedule. They would still move through their class schedule. They would still move to different classes. We haven't really talked about cohorting that group. We just tried to keep those groups split in half. So if there is a case, that automatically brings our number to half the potential contacts. So there hasn't been a lot of conversation about keeping those groups in cohorts and then eliminating some of the classes that they've chosen. So we want to keep them in those if we can. Amanda's asking, daughter wants to know if she's allowed to play with friends, give hugs, and not be told to be 6 feet away from them and do recess. I'm going to do the last one first because it's the easiest. Recess, yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So I'm hesitant to give an answer on the hugs and in particular at this point because I don't know what that order is going to look like. At the same time, we want kids to be kids too. So to be able to play with their friends, absolutely, that would be allowed. It's just, will they have to be masked during that time? If they are playing with them. So still trying to come to the answer with that. I don't know it though. Shay is asking about face shields being an option. Absolutely, face shields would be an option, and I think our staff members will have multiple options in terms of what their desire is in terms of face shields or masks or whatever they're looking for. And we've also looked this week at plexiglass barriers at small group tables as an option. We're going to actually have Brian Holman and his crew build some prototypes for those here in the coming days. So those are all things that we're looking at right now. I'm sorry if I'm not giving yes, no, yes answers. There's just so many things changing. We are looking at multiple different face shields, and they would, anything that's going to help our staff feel like they can connect with kids, and vice versa. If there are things that kids really need that would be better for them, then we're going to look into those things, and that's an important component. If they feel more comfortable in a face shield that has something underneath it that can keep keep all of that in, then absolutely we can try to work out what that would look like. So we're not saying this is exactly what it's going to look like, but we're open to all options at this point. So question is, virtual learning seems to be used in many scenarios. Am I correct in that if a family chooses the virtual option, that this is an option using an alternate education program, so they are not being taught by Fall Creek teachers' curriculum other than the one coordinating teacher that is not a subject expert? That is correct. That is correct thinking at the middle school and high school level at this point. When it comes to the K-5 group or the 4K through 5 group, we're trying to figure out a way that we're going to utilize our current staff. When it comes to 6-12, at this point, we're looking at using GradPoint to deliver the virtual option for anyone who chooses the virtual option. Felicia asked, did the school board make a decision? The school board, in this case, we gave all the information to the school board, and ask them, are there any of these options that are not on the table? And then we'll make a decision as a group in terms of what we believe is the best opportunity for kids. But they took none of those options off the table, gave us their feedback on what they felt like would be the most favorable, and then as an administrative team and a staff, we'll make a decision from there. We have not covered band yet, Kristen, and we're working with Mr. Stoughton on what that would look like. He is going to have summer band, and we're getting some guidance from other school districts in terms of how we can do it. That also equates to choir, and are there places that we can have or hold choir as it traditionally has been held, and that might end up being in an outside format, in different spaces. We actually looked at the auditorium, and even the auditorium isn't large enough to facilitate our choir being in there to safely distance in between people. Keep them coming. You have more questions, I'll stick around as long as people want. While I've got a little break in the action here, I do want to talk about the survey that's going out to families tonight or tomorrow morning, depending on. There's a couple things I do want to add. I might send it out tomorrow morning, just to be honest. So, and that survey asks a couple questions. The first question is: are you looking at, or are you committing to a virtual option for the 2020-21 school year? Which might be flexible in terms of when you could, if it doesn't work out, you could absolutely come back into school for a face-to-face opportunity. But we want to know who's committing to the virtual option, because we need to know how much space we have available. And right now, if we were going to do the K-8 option, that does mean that we're going to have to utilize all spaces and may actually have to use spaces outside of here to make that happen in terms of a face-to-face 5-day per week opportunity. So we need to just see where people are at when it comes to the virtual component and whether or not that's something that they want to do. The second question speaks to the transportation, because right now, we're getting the information that we got from the county in terms of talking to student transit originally came out at a number that we felt like we could move people. The second number that it came out at was less than 10 kids per bus to come into school. And if that's the case, then there's no chance, if we have a number of people riding bus, there's no chance that we can start the school day at the same time for all of the students on site. So we just need to know if you rode the bus last year or are scheduled to ride the bus this year. Are you going to be riding the bus, or will you be self-transporting so we can keep the start times the same? All right, well, a couple more came in. Question about IEP and speech needs. Those are all services that we're going to continue to provide, absolutely. And in the plan on the website, all of the SPED intervention groups are individual planning groups. So we'll definitely be able to provide those services. They just might be done in a different capacity. If somebody chooses the virtual option, will there be opportunities to come back to an in-person school throughout the course of the year? Absolutely. If someone chooses the virtual option as and they get into it and they're like, this is not for me, this is not working, we can't do it, then we would absolutely allow that group to come, or that individual, the group of individuals to come in. We will probably have standard times at which they can come back in, because if we have everybody flexing in and out, especially with the space issues that we have, it's going to be really, really difficult to manage. So we'll set up a system where if you are looking at, or if you're doing the virtual and it's not working out for you and you want to come back to face-to-face instruction, it would be allowed, but it would be allowed on a timeline that we develop. Yep, Che, there will not be a decision, and no, spoiler alert, there will not be a decision that's going to make everybody happy here, and I understand that. I totally understand that, and that is not a feel sorry at all. Absolutely, we chose this. We chose this. We chose it. We'll make the decision, but at the same time, it's not going to make everybody happy. We're just trying to do the best we can. What specifically has been the county health department's recommendation on masks? Not any personal or community preferences. What are they right now? They're recommending masks in utilizing masks as much as possible and social distancing, but not requiring that. That's the recommendation. So when I talked to them last week, and I'll talk to them again tomorrow, I talked to them about our plan to make sure that we were masked in common areas, but if they were 6 feet away from anybody working independently, if they would be able to take time away from the mask. And at that point last week, when I had that conversation, they were okay with that, but they kept coming back to the more that they can mask, the better, the less, or the better the opportunity for less spreading of the virus or germs in that regard. Has there any discussion about anywhere about year-round schooling to space out the building use? Mike, that hasn't really been a conversation here. I know that Toma has just started with their year-round schooling, and we're keeping an eye on that. I've made no secret about the desire that I have to take a look at what year-round schooling would be without the pandemic, to be very honest. And I think when people hear year-round schooling, they think we're going to be going all the time. But I think that there's definitely value in taking a look at, could we go a little further into June, start in the middle of August when half of our kids here playing athletics already, and then take different breaks throughout the course of the year. So I've been I don't want to say a fan of, I've definitely been a proponent of taking a look at what year-round schooling would be like, and that's been a couple of years at this point. But nothing specific in terms of building use at all. We want to try to keep kids, as many kids as we can here safely, and move on from there. I don't think that answered your question, Mike. I'm sorry, but I guess it has. We haven't discussed it at that point. How many kids will be in a given room? Right now, we're working with numbers anywhere from 12 to 15, well, from like 13 to 16 or 17, depending on the room at the elementary level, and 16 at the high school level. And that's not a hard, fast number for us. We're taking a look. There will be some adjustments made to those rooms in terms of getting as much furniture out of those rooms as we can, to make sure that we could get enough seats in those spaces. And we've been talking to a couple different groups that have taken a look at what spacing could really look like, and not only making sure that they're 6 feet apart, but giving an alleyway and allowing people to have space to get in and out of the room while still maintaining that 6 foot barrier. If someone happens to test positive in the school year, will there be notification to the families? We're letting the county take the lead on that, and whatever their process is for us notifying families, that's the one that we're going to use. So I would assume so, but I don't want to commit to anything in terms of that, as we're going to run through the county when it comes to how they handle it. It's a great question, though, Stephanie. Thank you. Will parents be allowed in the building at the end of the day to pick up their children? Thanks for the question, Shauna. And this is going to sound harsh, but no. Well, we want to really reduce the number of people in the building, and we would be asking parents to wait for their kids outside if we could. If people come to pick up their kids early, we are going to be asking them to go through a process that would either leave them outside or leave them in the foyer area, and we would bring the student to you. Have parents assisting as volunteers been considered, even cleaning or helping with masks or social distancing? Shay, that's a great question. I will write that down. Absolutely. That is not something that we've considered in terms of having some people consistently in the building. We're really trying to reduce the total number of people in the building, but anywhere from, we're going to have issues with substitute teachers. Let's be very clear about that. And so if there's a way that we could add a couple of substitute teachers that are always in the building, and we know they're always in the building because we need subs every day. If there are people that are willing to be in the building every day, and we can contract them for all 187 days of the school year, all the days of the school year, then we would really consider doing that, knowing that we would need subs on a daily basis. And if we contract them for that, then we know that they're coming to one place all the time with the same group. They'd be in different groups within the school, but at least we know that they're here, not subbing, at Robbins in Eau Claire, and then at Mondovi and Chippewa Falls and Altoona. We know that they're right here. How will special needs students keep up with the curriculum and not get behind to advanced grade levels? I think with all students, Crystal, what we're trying to do is the more individual work that we can do with teachers, the better they're all going to be. So those individual plans will hopefully really continue to work with how we're moving them forward in the process, which would mean that there would be some. I did talk to the county health department about pulling kids out into a different room and doing work with them if they are an intervention group or a different a subset of that needed some additional help. And that was not it wasn't a no at all. What they've told me is that we just want to keep those groups smaller and consistent, and if we can do that, then we're going to be in a good place. But that would we'd still be able to continue services as needed. Yeah, Jeff, when it comes to if somebody's sick and then can your other student come to school, we're getting guidance from the health department on that. We will ask parents to self-certify in terms of having their students. Are their students ready for school? Are they healthy enough to come to school? And I think that immediately when I start talking about that, I think some people then automatically go to, well, what if a parent decides that they really need to have their student in school and they give their student Tylenol or ibuprofen just to get through, and their fever reduces and they know they have to get there. And I guess there's got to be some level of trust in this. And I think what those parents that would think about doing something like that need to understand is, if that does happen and you do send somebody to school that has potential symptoms and they end up spreading the disease, it's not just about being out of school for 1 or 2 days. It's about a larger group being out of school for 2 weeks as they're quarantined. So lesser of two evils when it comes to, keep the kids home, keep them safe, keep them symptom free, and then get them back into school, as opposed to having one wing of the school or the entire school shut down for 14 days. Because that's not good for anybody. What about temperature checks and screenings? Will those be required or reported? Like I said, we're going to do some self-screening on that, and we're going to try some things out during summer school, which essentially will mean that parents will need to sign off on whether or not these criteria have been met, if they're symptom-free, if their temperature is less than 100.4, and if they certify that student is able to go to school, then that student will be able to go to school. We're trying to make it as easy as possible for parents by having a Google form set up. We're also looking into, on our Fall Creek app, to have one icon on the app that you could just click and then put the name of the student and check, I certify that these things are true, and then click, and then we go. So we're trying to make it as easy as possible for our parents, but then also, if we have to have some level of trust in terms of, if they show up to school and they've self-certified, we have to trust that they've self-certified accurately and honestly. Will the younger kids have help getting stuff together at the end of the day since parents can't be in the building? Like example during winter, making sure that they have all their winter gear on before coming. Yes, yes, absolutely. We want to when we're going to send kids out into the cold, we want to make sure that that we've done everything we can to make sure that they're prepared to go out into the cold. If that means that we need to close down the instructional piece of it a couple minutes early at those younger levels to make sure that they're dressed, then we absolutely will do that. Will 12 to 16 children be in a single classroom, be social distancing with that classroom? Smaller groups with smaller classes, yes. That Naomi, that's what we were referring to in the presentation with the cohort in the cohort model. So you have the cohort of 16 kids. What we would be trying to do is, if we work in small groups in the classroom, to continue to work in a similar small group during an extended period of time. That does make it more difficult to make sure that kids are at their exact level with the group, working with a group at that exact. If one individual just takes off, or one individual is really struggling, that doesn't help that process. But if we have a system set up that we get people into and out of groups in a consistent fashion over the course of X number of weeks, then I think we're going to be in a good spot there. Question about kids, at some point not doing really well from an online perspective. I think if we're in an A/B model at the high school level, then we'll have, I believe, enough connection with the individual instructor in that area where it's not going to feel like it's an all online opportunity. It'll be more of a flipped opportunity where they would get the lesson early, be able to watch the lesson online multiple times if they chose, and then when they come into school, it would be more like a lab discussion extension of what they learned during those mini lessons. How will you decide what students go on what day? And we'll be trying to keep siblings on the same days. Yeah, we will try to keep siblings on the same day, and if there's a real desire, then we'll try to work with individual families, but we would try to keep everybody in the same capacity if they chose. If people chose to, if you have two high school students and you want to keep them together, coming on the same day, that would be great. Sometimes I feel like it might be okay to have one of my kids go Monday, Tuesday, and one of them come Thursday, Friday, because that would give individual time at home, or so they wouldn't be at each other. That's my house. So. These are great questions. I hope I'm getting to some of the answers. I'm sorry if I don't. Oh, hang on. What are teachers or staff feelings towards coming back and working with students? I think our teachers are excited about it. I think they're concerned, and rightfully so, to make sure that all the precautions are in place. And but I know that they want to see kids. There's no question. Every teacher that I've talked to about coming back and connecting with kids, there's no question that they want to do that, but they do want to make sure that we've taken care of the precautions so they can do their job, and we're going to do everything that we can to make sure that happens. If whatever they need to instruct, we're going to do the best that we can to get them what they need. If that's face shields and masks and things to separate, or different areas, or if that means that a group would feel more comfortable off site, then we're going to do everything that we can. There's been no decision made in terms of that, but we want to make sure that they're part of that conversation, and we have our principals working with them right now. So, yeah, we all want to see kids. We want kids to come back. We want them to come back in a safe fashion, and we want to stay safe too. But as I think about where we're at with our group, we want to make sure that part of my job is to make sure that our teachers all of our staff members are put in a position not only that they can be successful but be safe. So those keep coming up. Stephanie's asking, are the online days going to be more structured with the video classroom and a teacher directing that, or is it just email of assignments that kids need to do on their own? We believe at this point that those are going to be much more structured in terms of how they're delivered. So we're working on a process for that, and what we want to do is make sure that if there's any virtual component to what we're doing, that there's some consistency in what that looks like for all grade levels that are involved in the virtual program. So you don't have to have that conversation with two of the kids at home going, well, that's not how this person does it, and that's not how this person does it, and this person does it different than this person. We want to make, we're putting you as the parent in the middle of all that. We want to make sure that we're providing as much consistency as possible. So I would say that yes, there would be more structure in what that looks like. We got about three or four more minutes to answer any more questions, and I'll just hang out and just keep them coming if there's any more. If you asked a question earlier that didn't get answered, can you please put it back in there? Because as I'm scrolling through, I just want to make sure I didn't miss anything. But if I did, just throw it down at the bottom, because I don't want to miss you. I'm not trying to avoid any questions at all outside of hair care product. What if for some reason a parent can't provide a mask for kids before they come to school, or they lose a mask? Will school have extras, and will they have to miss a day? Because they absolutely will not have to miss a day because they don't have a mask. That is, no. There's not a lot of things that I can unequivocally say no. That's a no. They do not have to miss a day. We will have masks if they don't have their mask. So send them. Mike, great question about WIA Sports and allowing fans in person. I don't even know we don't know what they're allowing at this point. So, it might be productive to have Brad Saransky come on here in one of the next couple weeks to kind of talk about where sports are once they kind of get some of the stuff hashed out. I mean, the announcement, the board meeting today, the WIA board meeting was like literally 5 hours ago. So I think people are still trying to digest what happened during that time. And, I think it was first pushed off, start dates were pushed off. And then there was another option proposed where if people opt out of a fall option, there might be a spring option for fall sports, which would then run into spring sports. And it's just, there's so much to it right now that I think I want to digest that before I answer any of those questions. But they haven't said anything about allowing fans, and that's more of a county decision than anything else in terms of how allowing people to come into that into the area. So parents, please look for that email from me tomorrow and just let us know if the virtual option is something that you're going to take advantage of, the Cricket Online piece in particular, which is the 100% virtual. And then that would give us a little indication also in terms of the transportation. As I mentioned earlier, the transportation, the numbers were what we thought were about 25 per bus, which we could probably make happen if we had some help in terms of transporting kids to school. But that number moved from 25 to less than 10. I believe it's 8. And, that means for every route that we have, we're looking at like just transporting roughly 40, 50 kids at a time and then doing the route again. Will hand sanitizer be available in classrooms? Absolutely. We have a system set up with Mr. Holman right now that we have all of this stuff ordered, and then every time that it's ordered, it's actually reordered to make sure that we always have enough stuff. And there'll be hand sanitizer available, but we're also really going to encourage kids to wash their hands because it's better for them. And we're going to have protocols in place where that's actually something that we teach, so they know what they're, so there's an expectation of what that looks like as well. All right. Well, if everybody, if you have any questions, I got a couple of calls this week from people, and I appreciate those calls, and hopefully we had a good discussion on what those things could look like, and we'll continue to do so. We're just going to try to answer as many questions as we can throughout the course of the process. And thanks for joining us, and we'll continue to do it. If there are things that we did not address tonight that you think, man, you should really address that, please email those to me. We're not trying to push anything to the side. We're not trying to avoid conversations. We don't have all the answers, but we're ready to just kind of get it out on the table. And if you're struggling with something, we just want to know about it. So send it our way, send it my way. Email joesanfilippo at fallcreek.k12.wi.us. Call my office, 715-877-1000. And hopefully we can get you, if I can't get you the answer, maybe I can get you to the group that can. I've been pushing a number of different conversations or emails to our principals or Kelly Spakine, our SPED director, just to make sure that you get the answer that you need from the right people, not from me all the time. Okay? All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We'll be back next week again at 6:30 on Thursday. Please continue to check the COVID-19 page. If anything is added to that, we'll send out an email on that. Parents, look for the survey. I'm just going to say tomorrow. We'll do it tomorrow morning. And if we could have that in by the middle of next week, that would be really, really helpful for us. So that's all I've got. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a wonderful night. Have a great weekend. And we look forward to continuing to work with you. Take care. Go Crickets.